Okay, greetings YouTube. How y'all doing out there? This is hopefully a final video on my studio. Actually, there'll never be a final video on my studio. It'll never be finished, of course. This is going over mostly just how everything is hooked up together, how I route my effects through everything, how I can sequence all these synthesizers. This is definitely not a video about, hey look, here's all my synthesizers. This is more about, here's how I'm actually using them. But just to get things out of the way real quick, what I have here is 20 synthesizers that are all basically able to be recorded, live, and they're all in some way hooked into the mixer. And the mixer, in this case, being the one that you're looking at right now, which we'll get to here in a second. But out of that, 9 of them are analog, 11 are digital. 2 of them are actually not sequenced. The Lyra 8 and up here, the soft pop. But let's see what else we got. We got seven drum machines. 3 are analog, and 1 of them is a sampler. And I have additionally another sampler that I'm using that's for mostly kind of like vocal effects. And speaking of effects, on the table there's a total of 14 effects boxes, not including what's down here in the rack, which I don't have the light on down there right now, but you can see it well enough. And so yeah, so what's going on here? And pardon me, you know me, when I make these videos, they're totally unscripted, and I just kind of wing it. So this could be a 20 or 30-minute video. We could be in for the long haul. I don't know. We shall see. But basically, let's do this. Everything basically takes off right in here into the Scarlett, and that is my audio interface that goes into my computer. And I just basically record everything I record everything into Audacity, like you're seeing now. So I'm actually speaking into a microphone, and that microphone is a headset microphone, and it's coming in here this track that's labeled Vox, which is number 15. And additionally, it's also got, you can't quite tell, but there's a cable going into the insert which eventually routes to a compressor. So right now my voice is going through a compressor that's down here in the rack, and you might actually be able to see some of the meter lights moving as I'm speaking. So that's how I'm able to get my voice into everything. That's also how everything is able to get over to the computer and be recorded. Excuse me, let me watch the camera while I do this and don't get everything out of focus. So, but this is the main mixer. And this one right now currently has roughly about 16 different synthesizers, including the Volca Kick, going to it. Let me back that up, 15, because the AY3, which is this little tiny black box right here, actually takes up 2 channels. As you can see here on my mixer, I've got it labeled. It takes up channels 12 and 13. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of jump ahead. I'm not taking those to any kind of a stereo mix because I want to be able to have control of the panning of them. Sometimes I want them to be kind of straight mono, and sometimes I want them to be stereo. But let's not get too off the beaten path. The AY3 is a video all to itself. I could spend 30 minutes alone just talking about it, and then another 3 hours, just playing it. Okay, so. But this mixer handles more than just those 15 synthesizers and the Volca Kick, which basically it handles pretty much everybody kind of over here in this area, and then some stragglers over here to the right. But it also handles a lot of effects returns as well as my vocal mic. And I'll kind of get all that to a second. So let's kind of take a brief trip over here to the Roland Boutiques. I've got these 6 guys set up. There's 4 synthesizers and 2 drum machines. And I have a couple more, but I chose these specifically for a number of good reasons. I mean, the SH01A and the JX03 are like my favorite synthesizers, or are among my favorite synthesizers. The TB03 is actually one of my least favorite TB303 clones, but at the same time I love it so much because it's so quirky and there's a lot of edge cases that it can hit. You can pitch it up very high and abnormally so, and you can do some kind of interesting things when you double it up with another TB303 clone. But these 6 are powered by 2 USB power banks, yeah. And I have to recharge these on occasion. And let me see if I can show you. This might be a bad idea. But yeah, so like right now, this one's down to 95%. The other one's probably about the same. So I can get maybe 12 hours off of those, maybe less, 10 hours or something. Definitely enough to do a couple days worth of jams. And then I have two more, so I'd kind of swap them out after I recharge them. But I'm working on a solution right now where I'm actually building my own 6-port USB power supply to supply 5 volts to each of these. And that kind of gets to some of the things that we would like to get to down here, but they're kind of hard to see. But what you're seeing down here are 2 of the 6 MIDI hubs that I'm using. 4 of the MIDI hubs are homemade that I made myself, and the other 2 are the RetroKits RK004 smart hubs. Mine are just like regular through ports. They just get the job done. But the RK002, there's one back here. It's kind of hard to see. Definitely hard to get to. And then I've got another one, excuse me, to keep the camera down, right here. And that was actually fairly easy to get to. And what's kind of cool about these guys is they also provide a CV clock out. So I've got CV clock out here going over to my work desk. And this is where I can do my little micro jams. And this is my native mixer that I use for the micro jams, and this is the camera that's set up for it. And then this is another little 9-volt distribution box that I built to power my guitar pedals and Volcas and things like that. Right now the native's turned off. So is the synth pop. And but it's all I have to do is turn the native on and make sure that the mixer's down. Over here, excuse me, I gotta adjust myself. Anyways, so let's talk a little bit about this. Where's my other light? Here we go. So this is the Alesis mixer, and it's was it 12 channels, I believe? Yeah. And it basically handles all the drum machines, with the exception of the Volca kick. I might switch the Volca kick out and put it down on this one, but that we'll think about that later. Over to the left, channels 1 and 2 are where the native mixer that you just saw, that's where they feed into. The DFAM, the Volca sample, the ER1, and now the TT606, as well as the TR808 and the TR909 all go into this mixer. And this mixer in turn feeds into channels 17 and 18 on the big mixer, which is a stereo track. And it's interesting how I was able to kind of get everything to work out somehow magically. There was a bit of a compromise, kind of moving things around. So for example, the AY3 takes up 2 tracks, and the ER1 also takes up 2 tracks down here, as you can see, as well as the sample. But the 12R mixer has 2 stereo tracks, and I chose to use the 808 and then the TR08 and the TR09. I just have them listed as 808 and 909 here, just for grins and giggles. But I chose to use those as stereo because what's happening is back here, the TR08 and the TR09 are routed directly to these 2 Korg mini Chaos pads. I'm not sure that a lot of people really know much about these. I mean, people do, but I don't see enough of these out there. They have interesting limitations in terms of the current that they can push out from their audio, but if you got a good mixer, you can pick that up on the other side without introducing too much noise. That is a little bit of a setback, but the power you get from the effects that these things offer, it's well worth it. Now they are a little pricey, not going to lie about that, but I actually have 2 of these mini Chaos pads that are dedicated to those 2 drum machines. And the reason why I do that is because I can do stutter effects and be able to sort of achieve like drum fills without actually having to program a drum fill. One thought that I'm thinking about is getting them closer to the pyramid, which we will get to here in a little while. Don't worry, we'll get to this. This is the main sequencer. I first want to talk about the audio routing before I get into the MIDI stuff, though, which we're almost done talking about the audio stuff. It's actually fairly simple without going into the patch bay. One thing I'm not going to talk about is the patch bay, because I can understand that patch bays can be a bit confusing, because you're kind of like, wait, why am I using this again? And yeah, it's a little weird, and you end up spending a lot more money for what you're getting out of it. But and you can see right now I'm not really using it because I haven't had the need to use it yet. But trust me, it really is pretty handy. I am using it here for my headphones, but I'm not going to talk about that, I don't think, on this video. Because if I do that, I first want to make sure that you understand really what a patch bay is and how it's configured. Because there's like a number of different ways to configure a patch bay to do a number of different things. Okay, that's too much of an aside. So what else do we have? This mixer. So this is the small Behringer mixer that I bought with the intention of doing like small live jamming with it. That was before, what a crazy year this has been. Okay. But what I'm using it now mostly for is, if I can get this out of the way, are the synthesizers from the Roland Boutique synthesizers, not the drum machines, but just the 4 synthesizers. And it also takes care of the Delta Sep, which is hands down probably my favorite synthesizer, as well as the way over here on the far end, the Strike Fet. Now the Strike Fet and the Delta Sep are both stereo, so that's great that I've got these stereo tracks available for them. And the VP03 and the JX03 are pseudo stereo. They're not really stereo, but the chorus effects that you can get from them are stereo. So I've got them going into stereo tracks just because that's where they fit. And that's what I was talking about earlier, how I just kind of seem to kind of luck into everything sort of like a puzzle piece fitting all together in the right way that I needed it to. Now meanwhile, the SH01 and the TB03 are on tracks 1 and 2, and those are mono tracks. So this is a weird little mixer. You've got really only, what is that? I can't count anymore. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tracks. But 2 of them are mono and 4 of them are stereo. And that's another topic I would love to get into, because I see all the time people wanting synthesizers, all synthesizers to be stereo. It's like, oh, well, we've got 2 ears, it has to be stereo. And you see, that's why you need a mixer like this, folks. Just a quick little aside here, if you don't mind, a little soapbox. Not really a rant, but advice. This is what a mixer like this does. And even honestly, to tell you the truth, even a small mixer like this little Nady here that's like about $30, they may be getting hard to find though, not really sure. And I'll quick talk about the Nady. The downside is trying to find a power adapter that fits into it. Mine is currently battery powered, which is why it's not on. Okay, but with a mixer like this, you see, I've got 16 mono tracks and then only 2 stereo tracks, not including some of the stereo return tracks up here. This really has 24 tracks, so I've got 2 more returns, and I've also got 2 more free returns I could use for the effects, which I'm not using right now at the moment, and I should have, but I kind of just discovered that. Yeah, and but so all these mono tracks, once you bring into a mixer like this, and you introduce what's called a chorus effect, and you blend it in, you suddenly turn anything stereo. It immediately stereofies everything. And it's just a much better way to go, because really when you're dealing with like 1 track and it's mono, it's so much more easy to manage. And then actually everything's getting mixed into a stereo bus, so at the end of it you can spread it out as far as the stereo spectrum as you want. Very nice, very nice. Okay, sorry for that aside. But that's, the thing about mono is, it's not as bad as you might think it is. Okay. So what else can we talk about? What's interesting about this is that one thing you may have noticed is that right now, and I do have the key step behind me, not the key step Pro, just the old key step, but you don't see, with the exception of this, there really aren't any key beds. I mean, that technically is a key bed. That's like a button bed. I mean, this is a 1 octave keyboard right here. I've got another sort of 1 octave keyboard right here on the Crave, and actually the 1 or so octave button sort of thing that's laid out like a bass on the EA1 is one of my favorite interfaces. I think it's because I'm a saxophone player originally, and I have a hard time dealing with the 2-layer structure on a piano. It kind of trips my brain up too much, the black and white keys. But here, just everything being all in 1 row, I tend to work a little bit better on it. But yeah, there's really no key bed interfaces into any of this. And I'm not doing that for a purpose or a reason or everything. It's just really because there's no space for it. I would love to have more room for that. I'm going to turn the lights off down here. And, you know, I've also got the VC340, which is upstairs in my bedroom, and there's no room for it down here. Oh, I would love to have it down here. Okay, so that pretty much covers the audio of like the synthesizers and me coming in. But what about the effects? So I already talked a little bit about these two, and this is basically two drum machines going direct in, and then the output of those two go into the mixer. So that's the exception to this rule. I've got one more exception, and that's this Lyra 8, and it's actually running directly out into my Earthquaker device's Avalanche Run stereo delay, but I'm not using the stereo right now, and I will be soon. I'm going to reuse one of these free stereo returns that I just kind of discovered. And then, but out of that goes, oh wait, let me back up, I'm sorry. The Lyra 8 first goes into the Erica Sense acid box, and the output of this goes into the Avalanche Run. The Avalanche Run is a dual reverb and delay. So this is not the best use of this pedal, but it's a use I can use right now. Next to it is an incredible dual reverb pedal from Electro Harmonics called the Oceans 12, and this thing is just incredible. I'm still learning this thing. So, for example, if I want to use the Oceans 12, I currently have it configured for this yellow FX1. Now, normally the yellow knobs go to the internal effects on the mixer here, but I'm not using these. I used to use them all the time, and like all the past mixes that you saw from last year and so forth, totally used the effects on this all the time. I usually used like some delays, which were set delays. They had fixed delay times. You just kind of had to pick something that was in the ballpark. And it was cool. I mean, it actually worked really, really well. And I would also use chorus, maybe some reverb. That was pretty much it. I experimented with like a lot of the other effects that it offers, but those were the ones that really worked the best for me. Because, you know, without jumping the gun, these Zoom pedals do that job so much better. But we'll get to that here in a second. So I'm no longer using the onboard effects. And instead, what I'm doing is I'm routing what would normally go to these effects out, and one is going to the June 60, which I still swear by, and you can get them cheap now because people really hated them. But again, you know, you need a return mixer to really utilize it, because the reason why people don't like these pedals is that it does not mix the original signal back in with the affected signal, which is pretty critical for a stereo chorus. But as soon as you have like a mixer like this and you can do that yourself, you really suddenly pull all the value out of this pedal, and it opens up and it becomes a very, very useful pedal to you. And I'm also sending out to the Oceans 12. Now, meanwhile, yeah, this gets a little complicated. I've set up a stereo bus where I can use these buttons right here labeled 1 and 2 or 3 and 4. So 1 and 2 are routed to the subgroups 1 and 2, which go to this other mini chaos pad. So that way, any of these synthesizers can go to either this mini chaos pad, or they can also go to via 3 and 4 the Hypnosis, and they can also go to, as I showed you before, the Oceans 12 or the June 60. So now I've got all kinds of awesome analog and digital reverbs and chorus, which I think it's a digital chorus. No, it's an analog chorus. And of course this mini chaos pad. So this has got like vocoders on it, all the stutter effects and everything else. Now this one, I'm not really using it for drum machines, but again, if I want to, because pretty much all the drum machines are coming in on one track, I could send all of them to any one of these effects. Now that can be very dangerous and very muddy, but it's an option. And that's kind of, you know, that's what I'm going for here, is a ton of options. I guess I'm forcing myself into option paralysis, and to see like how well I can survive in that. So the Zoom pedals, I swear by these. These are just so awesome. They're cheap. They're kind of discontinued now, but I've got 3 of them down here under the mixer, and then another 2. So these, the way that this works is that the first 2 are accessible by these 2 red knobs on this mixer, the aux 1 and aux 2 out. whereas the third one here is the one that's available for this mixer. This mixer only has one aux out, and that's it really. That's okay. So it gets a zoom. So the SH01, the TB03, so like those, let me just start over. The SH01, the TB03, the VP03, and the JX03 all have to share that, as well as the Delta and the Strike FET. Now, this is one thing where I wish the Strike FET was somewhere else, and to tell you the truth, I can't do that though. I would love to swap out the AY3 and the Strike FET, because I'd like to get the Strike FET over here to where I can start using some more effects, but I might actually, I'll have to figure something else out for that, because I want to start getting some awesome phaser effects over here for the Strike FET. That's what really kind of starts opening those synthesizers up. Same thing with the VP03 and the VC340. Okay, sorry for that aside, but you kind of see how, you know, everything, you can always kind of optimize and find a better solution for things. So all of the synthesizers have to share this one effects box, and that's a compromise that I can deal with. For the most part, you know, they're fine. For example, the TB03 already has a delay effect built in. The Delta has awesome effects built in, so I don't even need to worry about adding other effects to it. And for the most part, the Strike FET, you know, even though it is great with phaser effects and everything, you sort of lose stereo panning when you introduce that kind of stuff into it, and has such great stereo panning that you really don't need any more effects. And it has built-in effects too. It's got reverb and a phaser built in, but I like these other phasers better. Okay, so they're analog. Let's see, where are we? And okay, yeah, so I turned the lights off down here, but the mixer that I showed you before for the drum machines, the Alesis, it gets, oh no, disaster. This, by the way, is my microphone transmitter, and it just fell. Luckily, it fell onto my seat, not onto the ground. Okay, so these two zoom pedals are used for the drum machine. So between the drum machines, I've got two pedals that I can use. And this is actually kind of hard for me to get to when I'm jamming, but I deal with it as best as I can. And let's see, I think that kind of covers all the effects. Now, a couple things, I've got these two pedals over here, and I wanted to use them right now, but I don't really have a way to get them over to the mixer apart from using an insert. And what I can do is I can get one cable out of one of these and, like, you know, plug it into here and take it out, and I'll immediately be able to route the signal to, like, through one of these effects and then back over to that track. And I would do that, but you know, I'm getting around to things, if you see what I'm saying. Like, so far, I haven't had a need to reach for these guys yet. These pedals are amazing. This is the Trogotronic P77 and an Alien Sasquatch, which is just a literal beast. So it's kind of funny, I got like these beasts all here in a row, and yeah, I did that on purpose. I apologize. Okay, I think that covers the audio. We're getting close to the end, hopefully. I do appreciate you sticking around this far. One thing I didn't talk about the DFAM. It is receiving clock in from the RK004 MIDI hub that's behind the Cat and the Model D right here. And I didn't talk too much about the Crave. The Crave actually is, well, we haven't got to the MIDI yet, but it actually is now coming in on the MIDI. What I need to talk about is the Spice. That's the one of the effects that I didn't talk about. This is a really gnarly distortion unit that has a lot of CV inputs. So it's really kind of a Euro rack device, and it's in a desktop case. So it makes a lot of sense to use it over here, and I haven't delved too much into just the pure semi-modular aspect of these synthesizers yet. I've done it, you know, some in the past with the ones that I've had, but I've got this set up for a reason. These synthesizers set up for a reason is because, you know, all of these patch bays are all kind of right here, and likewise I've got cables ready to go, you know, accessed right for them. And I've also got like a handy sort of like floating mult if I need to sort of like, you know, split signals and share them across, usually LFOs, to keep things kind of sort of synchronized more easily. There you go. That's a better way to state that. So, and I think that kind of covers all the audio stuff. Now, the sampler, what I do is I just take like the left mono out into the Delta Seps effects. And that works out really, really well. And because these effects, you've heard it before in the past. I mean, I need to be careful how I use them because you can kind of overdo it a bit. It's so much fun though. And the tape effect and the way it just goes back and forth, I just love it to death. But again, I need to kind of watch out and not overuse it too much. But now we need to talk about the MIDI side of things. And at this point, I do wish I could take a break, but I think I can get through this just after a quick breather. So we'll start with the pyramid. And let's see, let me make sure I can sit down. Okay. It took me a long time to decide on a main brain sequencer. I was using the BeatStep Pro for a long time and love it to death. You know, it's very versatile, very, very functional, and very playable, performable. It's only got 3 tracks. This thing has like 32 tracks or 64 or something, I can't remember. It definitely handles up to 32 devices, which is just way more than I need. Like I said before, what was that number again? 20 synths and 7 drum machines. And so 27 minus 3, that's like 24 MIDI devices that I have right now on this thing. If my maths are right, probably not. Again, you know, the Lyra 8 is not using MIDI. The DFAM is not using MIDI. Up over here behind me above is the Soft Pop is not using MIDI. Pretty much everybody else is. And one thing that I'm not doing is I'm not using, okay, I'll get to that in a second. I'm not going to talk about that just yet. So, who's what and where's where? So, MIDI, as you may or may not know, on each cable, on each, you know, sort of bus, if you will, you have 16 channels, and that's it. So, the pyramid has 2 different buses, as I want to call them, A and B, and it just works really well for me. So for the most part, most things over here to the right are MIDI bus B, and most things over there to the left are MIDI bus A, for the most part. And so over on MIDI bus A, the Pro 1 is number 1. Be careful here as I walk. Neutron is 2, K2 is 3. Can't have everything perfect. The Model D is 4, the Cat is 5, and the Wasp is 6. Now I'm trying to think. After that, the EA1, here's the cool part about the EA1. It's actually 2 synthesizers. It's like 2-part multi-timbral and 2 channels on top of that as well. And there's no voice stealing either. So it's truly 2 synthesizers, which is, you know, a boon and a bane. In this case, it takes up 2 MIDI channels and 2 tracks on my mixer over here. But it is, what is that? Where did I go to? 7 and 8. And then the Crave is 9. I kind of switched things around from the first time that I did this, but now, like, now that the Crave is accessible from the pyramid via MIDI, it needs a track, so I chose 9 for it. And now this puts the ER1 at 10, which is the really, you know, the default drum channel for the most part. And then the TR09 is 11. I'm sorry, 8. The TR08 is 11. The TR09 is 12. And then the TB03 is 13. The SH01 is 14. The JX03 is 15. And then finally, the VP03 is 16. Now, if you notice very carefully, there is a cable hooked into the mic in on the VP03. Quick aside, I didn't finish up the audio after all. That's actually routed all the way down here to the patch bay. And I'm not going to talk about the patch bay much, but what this allows me to do is to take, like, say, one of my pocket operators, like the PO12 drum machine, and plug it directly in and have it play through the vocoder. So that's great. Another thing I want to do, you know, very desperately, but I can't quite yet, is the EA1 has 1 audio in. The ER1 has 2 audio ins. Those are going to go to a 3rd patch bay that's coming as well, and so this is going to allow me to route all kinds of things to these synthesizers, and that's why I have the patch bay. Okay, so that covers MIDI bus B. MIDI bus A. As you can see, this is very, very involved. MIDI bus B is a little more disjointed. It's kind of weird. Right now, the bass butt is just the total black sheep in this whole thing, as well as the drum. But the bass spot is currently set to channel 1, and it is when I choose it to be. right now there is no MIDI in, there's only MIDI out, right? We'll get to that in a second, because this is the exception to the rule. It's channel 1, and the delta sep is channel 2. I may change that back. The delta sep used to be 1, and I may just take the bass pot out again because, well, I'll get to that in a second. I don't sequence the bass pot from the pyramid very often. It's the other way around. So, but I do need sometimes to have the pyramid controlling the bass pot. Sometimes I want the bass pot to control the pyramid, but that gets me into some troubles that I've ran into, but that's another story. So the delta sep A is currently set to MIDI channel 2. Now I got to think for a second. I'm forgetting who is 3. I want to say that 3 is the Micro Freak is 4. The Freak is 4. I forgot who 3 was already. Well, let's find out. So what I can do, what track I'm on here, and I can, excuse me, let me show you here. We can see here. I'm going to go all the way here to track 3, and let's see what we hear. Of course, that's the AY3 on track 3. How clever of me to do that, 3 for 3. So then that puts the Freak on 4, and I can change over here, and I should be able to hear the Freak. Yes, so as you can see here, I'm holding down. Same thing as... Okay, so the Freak is 4, and that puts the strike fet at 5 and 6, because then here's another one. The strike fet also is a synthesizer that has 2 MIDI channels. So I'm trying to watch the screen as I do this. Pardon me. I'm getting better as I go, I hope. It's the first on the strike fet, and the second one is like a solo kind of. And I can play both of those at the same time. It's very nice. And then finally, I added the D05 to the mix. It fit in really well right there. And it is on channel 7. Actually, not finally, we got more to go. Now, there is no 8. Nobody's on 8 or 9. But when we get to 10, and I think I need to get, make sure I'm on the right octave. We get to, nope, the sample. And this is actually, I ran into some problems with this earlier, and I'm already forgetting what my solution was. But basically, the sample used to be on MIDI bus A, and now it's on MIDI bus B. When it was on A, the RK02 MIDI cable was getting corrupted, and I think it was the bass pot that was corrupting it somehow. But now the bass pot can't get to it directly anymore. It has no chance of doing that. And this was just one of the easiest solution for me was to move it off that bus completely. Wait a second, that makes no sense because the bass pot's back on. No, it's not. Okay. It's like I said before, I'm already forgetting exactly what that solution was. But okay, finally, the Volca Kick is MIDI channel 11. So this way I can sequence everything. But here's kind of the very interesting part. Let me mute the Freak real quick because it's going to play. When I hit play on this guy, you'll notice the sample and the kick are both playing. However, nobody over here is playing. All 8 of these synthesizers have internal sequencers, and they respond to MIDI start events. And what's very nice about the pyramid is that it has a very, 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 very comprehensive MIDI section. So I can actually configure it to only send MIDI start events out one bus and not the other. So what I've decided to do is I want to send MIDI start on bus B because I only have a few synthesizers, namely the D05, and I believe right now its sequencer is playing. It's just that it's a blank sequence, which is probably why you're not. Well, okay, I just played it recently, so its little screensaver thing is not going, but that's an indicator. By the way, that one of the boutiques is not actually doing anything, as if you see the lights doing the little screensaver thing, it's not playing. But these guys over here are actually playing blank patterns, and the reason why I'm doing this is because when the pyramid is controlling everything, then I want it to be able to play sequences off the bass pot. Now let me talk about this for a second, because this is where it gets kind of weird. Right now, the bass pot is going out, MIDI out, over here to the drum drone. And then the drum drone is using the through port. You have a choice between out or through. And I'm actually using the through port, and that's going right now directly to the pyramid. However, it's not. You can't see it, but underneath the Hypnosis is a little switch that I built for a MIDI signal. So the cable is plugged into that little switch, and you might be able to see like a little kind of rainbow looking thing back there behind the blue G1 on. And it's just an A/B switch. I got like one signal coming in and then two coming out. Right now, the fader Fox is connected to the pyramid. But if I want to, I flip that switch back there, and all of a sudden the bass bot is connected directly to the pyramid. When I say to the pyramid, I mean it's going to the pyramid's in. So, you know, the pyramid is the main sequencer. Why would you want something going into it? Well, the reason is so that you can record MIDI patterns into it, sequences, other sequences. It's a very handy way of doing it, and as you may or may not know, the bass bot is an amazing sequencer. It just comes up with these amazing random patterns. And if you don't mind spending a little bit of time kind of going through them, you can tailor them yourself, move them around, copy them, and paste them in a way. It's really, 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 really cool. It's one of my favorite synthesizers, hands down. It's got, I mean, one of my favorite interfaces to work with. And I'm hoping to do videos on these one of these days and really talk about them. The drum drone also has an amazing interface that's just quick to get things up and running. So the idea is that these two synthesizers, whatever, pieces of gear, they're not going to be sequenced by the pyramid. They're actually I'm going to just sequence them on, like, using their own internal sequencers. But I need for the pyramid to be able to start them. Likewise, I need to be able to get a signal coming out of the bass bot over to the pyramid. So it gets to be a little bit of a challenge going back and forth there. And there's a couple more switch boxes I think I want to build that will make it easier, because like right now, if I want to have the pyramid control the bass bot, I have to unhook these cables and rearrange them a bit. And you know, it's a little bit of a hassle, but it's okay. And I have to kind of stop and think and make sure I'm doing the right thing as well. So that's kind of that. I guess what I can do is, this is interesting, is because the pyramid, because the pyramid, let me back up a little bit, that might be nice, but I still can't reach anything when I'm back here. Because the pyramid is sending MIDI start events to bus B, and the microfreak is connected to it, and and you're using a patch that uses the sequencer. When this thing starts, this thing just goes on its own. Check this out. I mean, that's not a sequence per se. That's a patch that has a sequence built into it. I'm gonna stop it. And I was gonna say so. Oh yeah. Things get really, really crazy. I don't think I can do this. I'm gonna regret it if I do. I wish I could. But right here is another MIDI, and this is MIDI. Let me think about this. This is MIDI out. And this MIDI out is connected to MIDI bus A over here. I might see if I do this. I tell you what, if I remember when I end the video, I'll do this at the end, because the problem is that I can't unhook it with one hand. I can put that in with one hand, but I won't be able to unhook it. And once it's in, it's chaos. But you got to hear this. It's so funny. So hopefully there'll be a bonus at the end of this video. There's a couple other things I want to show you, like. Let's talk about like these MIDI chaos pads. I just want to give you a quick demonstration. So you should be hearing the microfreak because it's pretty cool sounding. And by the way, when you're hearing the microfreak, that was some of the June 60 and some of the Ocean 12 mixed in with it. So some chorus and 2 reverbs. So I want to demonstrate a little bit with the the TR-08 and the TR-09 with the mini chaos pads. Oops. Okay, I don't know why that's happening. Oh, I do. Sorry. Here we go. That was the wrong track. So this mini chaos pad controls the drums you're hearing. and that's the TR09. And if I like it, I can just hold it there. And you get the point, hopefully. And there's one more thing I can show you, which is kind of interesting. Make sure I'm on the right track for this to work. Is this guy. I haven't talked about the fader Fox yet. And I just figured out how to use this thing. And it's going to take a long time to program it. I wish there might be a way for me to like create some sort of like data file, you know, just to like produce the data file directly from my computer. You know, maybe even using a little program to help or something. But for the most part, I'm going to have to go in here and configure all the MIDI CC for every synthesizer that I want to use one at a time, and then create scenes. And it's going to take a long time. But I've got these two encoders, the top two up here, currently, you know, with this particular, well, let's not talk about that. These two encoders right now are set to control the cutoff and resonance way over yonder on the TB03. So here's a quick little TB03. Let me turn off the microfreak. Just keep it out of the way. So it's definitely not as easy to use as the knobs on the TB03, but it's very nice to be able to sit here and to use that. And two things. One, I can actually record that information onto another track into the pyramid, send to that same MIDI channel, and it will blend in the MIDI signals that it sends all that over to the TB03. I can also use the pyramid itself to that, but this thing is just so cool. So for all of the boutiques and all the synthesizers that accept MIDI CC, I can create scenes and name them and then be able to control everything with these little knobs, and hopefully it won't be too confusing. But that's about it, you know, for what I'm doing. Let me see if I can remember, like, so what happens here? Okay, so yeah, I think we're at the end. Any questions? Okay, great, no questions. Pretty sure I covered everything. You know, I haven't used this mic yet. I'll need to create some more cables for it. There just hasn't been a need to use it. This headset mic has been wonderful for me, more than enough, because I'm able to move around and my voice is still very, you know, consistent. It's kind of hard to use a microphone unless you've been trained to use a microphone, not to point it at your face. Oh man, I need to do a whole video on this thing. The synthesizer is so awesome. But so what's going on here with the microfreak? So this is very interesting. Let me, I'm not even going to turn it on. And it is on a sequence. So when you have a patch that has a built-in sequence, and the microfreak is weird like that. It doesn't have a built-in sequencer per se, but you can sequence things and save them as a patch. So that when you just hold down a key, it just plays out a bunch of notes, and then when you let off, it stops. So just a quick demonstration. You know, you've already seen it before, but just another demonstration. Now, what's interesting though is that it's also there may be a way to turn this off. I need to look into it more, but it sends MIDI out when it does that. So let me see if I can do this with one hand. I want to try to plug in the MIDI. Here, I may have to support it. There we go. Now let's see if this works. What the heck? So that basically, let's watch over here what's going on. So we can see like the ER1 is already, and the EA1 too. You don't see the LEDs on the EA1 light up because it's out of octave range, but all, like any synthesizer that has like a sequence, with the I don't think, if you look like the vocoder up there, it's doing its screensaver. It's not doing anything. But I'm hearing the TR08, the TR09 are playing. I believe the TB03 and the SH01. That they so yeah, that's very interesting. What I wanted to do. Now, and let me get it off of a There we go. As long as you're on a patch that doesn't have a built-in sequence, it doesn't do that. And the reason why I wanted to do this was because now I'm controlling the wasp. Don't you get it? It's a capacitive touch key bed and a wasp. All right. Thanks for watching. I'll see y'all soon. Bye-bye.